Just to remind you, this is half the journey. Some of you have been very anxious that it's not perfect. But this is the material we're going to use on Friday for a group of people to start integrating this into a much firmer, clearer, strategic approach. So this is terribly important beginning work to articulate those key things where we can generate and improve and move forward. But also, more than anything else, this articulation of the dream, the vision. How could we be? Yes? So the essence of this conference is this shared understanding by Friday of where we could be and what steps we need to take to get there. But I thank you for the quality of work that's gone into that and the dedication. So starting with needs and strategies, we have a beautiful presenter somewhere hidden away. Needs and strategies.
Good afternoon. We started our discussion with what we presented earlier on, and we revisited the three discoveries, and we kept number one as it was. Number two, we slightly changed it, but unfortunately it's still reflecting what we had presented, but we thought that we shouldn't be saying conservation science does not exist, but that perhaps there is no clear format or clear platform at the moment. And then number three, we kept it like that. Let me go to the dream. We had a number of dreams, but we finally sort of zeroed on to three of them, and I'll read them. The first one is develop global web-based tools to collect and share data to discover the real needs by collecting properly randomized data on the state of heritage over time, and establish protocols and also involve stakeholders. So this is our big dream, that we have this tool where we can get quick information which addresses our needs. The second dream we had was that we incorporate long-term monitoring in heritage and in conservation science projects. Again, this is also linked to number one. The third one is, again, a dream, efficient delivery of scientific data to decision makers. We felt that it's important that decision makers have efficient data before they make their decisions. Thank you.
And we're going now to look at research projects, selecting and designing successful, relevant and impactful research projects. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Oh. No, there were two groups in needs strategies, so we need the second one. Sorry about that.
I was asked to find a volunteer to speak instead of an Englishman, but there were no volunteers. What discoveries have your group made today? We discovered that conservation science strategies and cultural heritage strategies, which include conservation science, we think there are many kinds of strategic documents that are potentially available, are beneficial at disciplinary, national, regional, and global levels. However, so far there are very few of them, but national and other models exist that can serve as examples. A prerequisite to the development of strategies is leadership, both visionary and influential, to direct, encourage and incentivize action. what are the positive implications of these discoveries? Through the use of science strategies, we can devise efficient needs assessments or foresight planning for 5 to 10 years ahead, over the horizon. We can encourage interdisciplinary working, and we can link to agendas outside our field and set and promote standards of knowledge transfer, post-project evaluation, capacity building, studies of value for money, and the popularization of conservation science through the media. And there's a big opportunity coming because in Hollywood, Tom Hanks is going to star in The Monument Men, which is a historical drama about the Allied armies after the Second World War rescuing works of art and conserving monuments after the destruction in Europe, which includes science. What are the things that we as the community can do? We can publish and promote templates for conservation science strategies and the cultural heritage strategies which contain conservation science. We can illustrate leadership roles by published case studies, and we can act as advocates or lobbyists to inform or influence politicians and conservation managers. Those are the site managers and curators who currently do not patronize or use conservation science. We can educate them in a way on the benefits and value of conservation science.
Thank you. And now we do research projects.
So, like, which one are you?
Research, I guess.
Research and practice?
No.
So this was in terms of selecting and designing successful, relevant and impactful research projects.
Let's get it up.
Hello. So the first discoveries that we made were many actually, but we chose these 3. One is that there has been technical progress. There are new techniques to vital indicators for the conservation and preservation state of cultural heritage. There's an integration progress as well from islands of disciplines and languages to an expertise of integrated research. And then there's also a broadening progress from a research-driven approach towards starting an approach that has includes the societal challenges and linking these with new techniques and existing ones from other disciplines or other fields. The positive implications are, and these are mostly our dreams, would be delivering high-quality inter- and multidisciplinary research, having a methodology for the assessment of the quality of our work, having a recognition of our publications by the broader scientific community, having an impact on heritage by solving problems for preservation and conservation, and having a recognition by society and having an impact and answers for these societal challenges that we mentioned before. And finally, how to get there, how to bring these dreams into reality, would be first by improving communication within conservation professionals, extending our skills so that we can actually achieve that communication, have a much better use of new technologies and media, and this probably interlinks with other groups, ensuring the sustainability of our research effort so that it actually covers many broad issues, ensuring also the durability of our data, and this led us to discuss aspects about how to share the information that is generated in different research areas, but also the limitations that exist in many countries where traditional knowledge is not necessarily shared to a broader community, sort of a secret kept in-house for certain processes. And then larger use and access to research infrastructure, which is not always available in all countries. We also spoke about potentially having a specialized journal or magazine for interdisciplinary research where it is mandatory to have this aspect, or probably suggesting that other existing journals favor articles that have interdisciplinary research. And then also training young researchers to cooperate rather than acting as soloists.
Changing practice through research. There must be someone. Research and practice? Oh, coming.
It's really interesting, actually, to follow up after the last presentation, because we had very, very similar ideas. So this is encouraging. We did not copy, I promise. So some of the discoveries that we talked about. The transfer from research to practice is non-linear, and it's a long-term process. Collaborative work between disciplines needs mutual understanding and respect. Changing practice and influencing policies need good evidence from research. And conservation science should and it can address big questions, big societal challenges. Here are some aspects of our dream. We dream of an evolved profession to problem solvers. So this is really talking about a cultural change where we have less boxed definitions or ideas of what the professionals are, more respect for each other, change the perception of the discipline. Secondly, greater impact on policies and practice, better effective metrics for measuring impact of conservation science research. And some of the things that we as a community can do involve a broader range of disciplines, for example, social sciences, economics, and these can be very helpful in measuring the impact. Training to improve communication and engagement with policymakers, colleagues. So this is really training in awareness and communication and almost to foster respect of the different disciplines involved. Again, all of this to lead to better cooperation. Exploit new research methodologies to bridge the gap between research and practitioners.
Brilliant, thank you. And Dissemination Group A, please.
I can't see where. Oh, there you are. There you are.
Thanks.
Just hit the phone. Clap.
Thank you, Alice. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I present on behalf of colleagues from Belgium, Korea, Canada, Senegal, Sweden, France, UK, USA, and India. And these are their thoughts, which I'm sharing with you. In terms of what discoveries as a group made, we realized that there is the very important aspect of understanding the variety of levels of information that we need to develop, keeping in mind the end user. That is first. There is need for common platforms and glossaries which have to be adapted to the context in which we are working, because we're talking about macro and micro levels in different cultures. I'm from the group that's talking about dissemination of scientific knowledge amongst various cultures. There is also value of the interesting narratives that demonstrate the applicability and usefulness of scientific knowledge, because we felt it was important to have tangible results to ensure that people understand the efficacy of disseminating scientific knowledge amongst communities, and that there is need to improve the quality and accessibility of existing tools such as abstracts, workshops, interdisciplinary dialogues, and media. In terms of what implications these discoveries have, we feel that it will provide open and credible information. It will reach as many end users as possible. It would adapt to the content. It would adapt the content to the level of the end users and the context in which they're working, and broaden dissemination to include exchange of information so that there is give and take of information from both sides. And as a community, what is it that we can do? In terms of a strategy, we've picked one of the points that was the level of information. We would list the end user groups and their needs, identify what would be the appropriate level of communication for them in their context, and then develop the specific content. That would be one. Then we would also endeavor to create a culture of sharing knowledge, including improving dissemination skills through education and training, and making sure that dissemination is built into project planning. And then, in consultation with existing information providers, many of you are sitting here in this gathering. In consultation with all of you, we would find a way of making scientific information openly available. Thank you very much. This group was moderated by Marie-Claude and Hilda, and thank you, George, for guiding the group along the way. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And Dissemination Group B.
I think we went on a very similar journey to Dissemination Group A, and also there are elements in here which have already been brought up by those looking at research strategies and so forth. We started with this extraordinary non-electronic PowerPoint presentation which guided us through the way in which dissemination can work within a project and extend from outside a project. And I think that started off the first of our discoveries, which was that we need different types of methods of disseminating to apply to different audience, different types of information, and there's no such thing as a so-called best technique. And we need, as I said, to extend this outside the groups we work in to other conservation professionals, to other people working within the heritage sector, and that this can begin in the groups we work in, but it needs often to be changed to be applicable locally, within different groups within one country, but it needs to be changed if it's going to work internationally, and using appropriate language both at a technical level and, of course, more prosaically, the language that is understandable by the group with whom you're working. This led us to do a lot of dreaming. At one stage we had 8 dreams, and we've managed to be very disciplined and get them down to 3, which is why they're rather long. So working on this idea of trying not to necessarily have a common language, but a contextual language, so that we understand who it is we're talking to, and without diluting what we're saying, we make it understandable and applicable to those contexts. And so when we talk to the lay public, to conservators, art historians, archaeologists, we can speak to them and exchange information in a way that's more meaningful. We talked a lot about the ways in which we disseminate and the ways in which that's driven by the environment in which we work and what is valued in terms of dissemination within those groups. And we felt that it was better if a way could be found not so much for our research to be recognised within each of these communities, but that we could persuade these communities of the benefits of looking at things from a practical way or a focused way, rather than the prestige that's often attached to academic and mainstream publication and dissemination. And I'm afraid here I think we strayed a bit into kind of strategy and policy rather than simply dissemination. We wanted a world where conservation science was on the whole problem-oriented, and it delivered practical, usable results within those contexts. And then we went to look at ways in which we might try to achieve this or begin to achieve this. And so looking at ways to expand the literature surveys so that we could include more grade literature, more things in more languages. And we dismissed the idea of trying to form some kind of knowledge portal ourselves because of the complexity of that, and thought that the better route for this was for us to expose what we have to existing and future methods of searching, be that through Google now, or perhaps in the future semantic web engines that have a smarter way of sifting data and information. We then wanted to address this question of recognition, as I said, not necessarily through us always adapting what we do to meet the standards of others, but by trying to identify how we can make changes in the way in which those assessments are made. And then finally, and again a point that's been brought out already, we wanted to strengthen our own ability within the scientific conservation community to communicate with groups that we don't talk to well at the moment, so that we understand the level of language, the complexity of language that's necessary in order for really good science, really good research to be usable by these groups, where ultimately it has its place. Thank you.
Education and training, exploring education paths, Group A.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In the beginning, I would like to mention that we have members from Qatar, India, China, Chile, and Western Europe on our table. This is quite important because we had to formulate much more open than with just the Western Europe view on the things. And we started with our discoveries, which are conservation, science, education and training has to be broad, and conservation science should be able to contribute in different areas within the cultural heritage field. Conservation science, education and training should incorporate mainstream science, traditional knowledge, and should be based on deep understanding of the processes, which is meant to be conservation, deterioration, analytical, art historical, cultural things, and so on. This part B, education and training of conservation heritage professional in science for conservation, we skipped that in the following, so I don't go on this. What positive implications does these discoveries have for cultural heritage conservation? So conservation science should bridge traditional and contemporary conservation through research. Conservation science have a deep sensitivity towards cultural heritage issues, which means, again, a view on the artistic or cultural intention of the cultural heritage as material, technological views, etc. Conservation science should be flexible, versatile, and develop problem-solving creativity. Conservation science should embrace diversity, because we saw that different countries have different needs. And finally, conservation science should enforce communication between science and cultural heritage departments. And finally, what we could do, we should allow different paths for conservation science depending on regional needs. We should raise the awareness of conservation science education field among scientists and public through good communications. And we should build an educational platform for professionals which are interested in conservation science. And these professionals could be scientists, conservators, architects, art historians, etc. Thank you.
And Education and Training Group B.
tried to masquerade as Group 1 so that we could get in ahead of Group A.
Where are
So
you?
that was a failed attempt, unfortunately.
Where are you? This one? Okay.
Okay, well, it's been interesting for us going last, listening to the topics discussed by everybody else. And certainly a lot of those themes were picked up in our discussions. But we've chosen to identify these 2 points as discoveries. Diversity of responses to educating conservation scientists occur along a spectrum of science-based conservation and conservation-based science. Conservation science requires a multidisciplinary approach in order to solve complex problems in local situations. So this requires an open-minded approach. And this concept of open-mindedness was a theme in our discussions. Our dreams are to have training in multidisciplinary understanding in order to develop an open-minded, self-confident professional able to innovate, anticipate, negotiate and communicate with others to solve conservation problems. So we were clearly seeing the conservation process and the training responsibility as something that provides professionals who can solve conservation problems, not necessarily do things to conservation objects. Our second dream is to develop interactive didactic teaching tools through international cooperation, which can be freely available nationally, regionally and locally through top-down and grassroots practice. So we're squeezing it in the middle, and Yohi said a delicious sandwich to take a bite out of. And the third one is to develop a unique conservation research method specific to our discipline that can be applied to a diverse cultural questions generated and justified through a dialogue with stakeholders. Thank you.